Ever walk into a room and immediately feel the tension, because that one person is there? Not because they're special, but because they always find a way to push your limits. They interrupt you mid-sentence, toss out passive-aggressive remarks, or act like your time and emotions are disposable. And somehow, society expects you to smile and be the bigger person. But how long can you keep tolerating that? If you've ever asked yourself, how do I respond to disrespect without losing my cool, or my dignity? Then this video is exactly what you need. Today, I'm breaking down some of the most brutally honest, and yes, a little bit bold, ways to deal with disrespect. Not through shouting matches or drama, but through quiet strength and intentional action. These aren't about revenge, they're about reclaiming your power without lowering your standards. Let's start with one of my personal favorites. It's subtle, it's sharp, and it can flip the power dynamic in seconds. 1. Embrace the silent stare. You might be skeptical at first. Just staring? Yes, just staring. But not just any stare, this is the calm, steady, unbothered stare that silently says, you don't get to rattle me. Here's why it works. When someone disrespects you, they're often fishing for a reaction. They want to see you squirm, stumble, lash out, anything that proves they got under your skin. That reaction gives them control. It drags you into their emotional chaos. But when you respond with nothing, no words, no expressions, just a firm, unwavering gaze, they don't know what to do. You've broken their script. Suddenly, they're the one who's uncomfortable. I remember this one meeting where a guy, loud, arrogant, the kind who thinks everyone's there for his TED talk, kept cutting me off. I tried to stay polite, tried to interject, but he kept going like I wasn't even in the room. So finally, I stopped trying. I leaned back, crossed my arms, and looked him straight in the eyes. No blinking, no frowning, just silence. 5 long seconds. And you know what happened? He faltered. His voice dipped. He got visibly uneasy. Suddenly, he wasn't so loud. That silent stare spoke louder than any argument ever could. It said, I see what you're doing, and I'm not here to play. It may seem like such a small move, but make no mistake, it's powerful. It's the clearest no you can give without saying a word. It doesn't just defend your boundary, it reinforces your self-worth. And that's only the first tool in your arsenal. There are more ways, quiet but effective, to stand firm, stay calm, and still let the world know, your boundaries are real, and they matter. That silent stare, it wasn't just a moment of quiet, it was a turning point. And what happened next proved just how powerful non-reaction can be. Seconds passed. I still said nothing. But in that silence, the entire room shifted. You could feel the tension rise like a wave ready to break. And then, the unexpected happened, people around the table began glancing at him. Eyes shifted. The spotlight had quietly turned. And now, he was the one being watched. He froze. His confident tone cracked. He stumbled on his next sentence. His eyes darted anywhere but at me, the ceiling, the notes, the table, even his coffee cup, but not once back to my gaze. And from that moment on, he didn't interrupt me again. Not once for the rest of the meeting. But here's the kicker, it didn't stop there. From that day forward, something changed. He started treating me differently, with more caution, more respect. It was as if he had finally seen me, not as someone he could bulldoze through, but as someone who stood their ground. Someone whose silence wasn't weakness, but power. This isn't just about a clever tactic. Let's go deeper. The silent stare does more than shut down bad behavior, it reclaims your space. It protects your peace. And most importantly, it reminds you that you don't owe anyone your emotional energy just because they demand it. We've all been there. Someone disrespects us. And our first instinct is to respond, to defend ourselves, explain ourselves. Or worse, just smile and let it go to avoid making things awkward. But in doing so, we hand over our power. We shrink to make others comfortable. The silent stare, it flips that script. It's not aggressive. It's anchored. It's not dramatic. It's deliberate. It says, I'm here. I see you. But I'm not giving you my peace. Not today. And here's something that most people overlook. People who are chronically disrespectful, they usually don't even realize it. Why? Because no one has ever held up a mirror to their behavior. No one has ever made them pause and see themselves clearly. But when you meet their disrespect with a calm, unwavering stare, no excuses, no anger, just presence, it's like giving them that mirror. You're not telling them they crossed a line. You're showing them. And trust me, most people don't like what they see. That's why it works. Because for the first time, they're not bouncing their energy off you. They're sitting with themselves, and that can be incredibly uncomfortable. But here's the hidden gift in all of this. That silent stare, it doesn't just stop the other person. It strengthens you. Every time you resist the urge to react, to laugh nervously, to explain, to fight back, you remind yourself that your self-worth is not up for debate. That you don't have to shrink or dance for validation. That you are grounded, centered, and whole, with or without their approval. I used to be the kind of person who'd brush off rude comments with a shaky laugh. Who'd over-explain myself just to avoid being misunderstood. But not anymore. That moment, that stare, became the first brick in a wall of self-respect I've been building ever since. And the best part? That was just the beginning. Because the next strategy we're about to explore isn't about silence, it's about speaking with strength. Without raising your voice. It's about the power of using calm words. That hit harder than shouting ever could. Let's turn the page and step into the next level of respectful self-defense. That was the moment I stopped explaining myself. Because once I felt the quiet power of that silent stare, I realized something deeper. I didn't need to argue to be heard. I used to think I had to defend myself all the time. To explain my choices. To smooth things over. But honestly, that just left me feeling drained. Exhausted. Worse than before. Because when you keep justifying your worth to someone who doesn't even respect it, you're giving them more power than they deserve. Learning to just look at someone, to let the silence speak, without backing down, without shrinking. That was a game changer. It might seem like a small act, but it's not. It's a quiet rebellion. A bold, steady signal that says, I see you, but I won't play your game. That moment of stillness becomes a declaration, not to them, but to yourself, I will not allow disrespect to disturb my peace. So the next time someone crosses the line, maybe they belittle you, talk down to you, or treat your time like it's disposable, don't rush to speak. Try this instead. Just look at them. Hold that gaze. Let the silence settle around you like armor. You'll be amazed at what happens. They'll start to shift, squirm, break eye contact, mumble. But more importantly, you will feel a shift too. Because in that moment, you're choosing yourself. You're saying without words, I respect myself too much to meet your disrespect with a performance. And honestly, that's a message worth sending. 2. embrace silence as your answer. Let me let you in on one of the most underrated, underused, and absolutely powerful tools in handling disrespect: silence. Now I get it. Silence feels risky. It feels like surrender, like maybe you're letting the other person win. But that's not what's happening at all. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is a choice. And sometimes, it's the boldest, clearest, and most dignified response you can give. When someone disrespects you, throws negativity, condescension, or passive aggression your way, what they're really doing is fishing. They want a reaction. They want to spark a fight, get a rise out of you, drag you into their storm of chaos. But when you don't engage, when you simply let their words float in the air without grabbing hold of them, that silence becomes deafening to them. Why? Because now, they have nothing to bounce off. No resistance. No feedback. Just themselves. And that, my friend, is deeply uncomfortable for people who are used to disrespecting others and getting away with it. Here's the beautiful part. Silence removes their power without giving them yours. It's not passive. It's presence. You are choosing not to engage. You are deciding not to feed their fire. You are protecting your peace without lifting a finger. And believe it or not, that silence often says more than any comeback ever could. It tells them, you're not worth my energy, my attention, my peace. And when you start to live that way, calmly, quietly, confidently, the people around you feel it. But we're just getting started. Because silence can shut things down. But the next strategy? It builds something new, a kind of respectful confrontation that commands attention without ever raising your voice. So yes, silence can be your shield. But more than that, it can become your loudest answer, one that echoes far beyond words. Here's the truth most people miss: when you remain silent, you're not backing down, you're standing tall in a way that says, I don't entertain disrespect. You're not playing their game. You're not giving them a stage. You're holding your ground, and refusing to give your attention to something unworthy of it. Sometimes, the most powerful way to speak is not to speak at all. It's not avoidance. It's clarity. It's a message that says, I don't have to perform for your approval. I don't need to explain myself to feel valid. I choose me. I remember a situation that perfectly illustrated this. There was this person I worked with, the type who mastered the art of veiled insults. You know the kind, they say things that sting, then laugh it off and pretend it's just a joke. It's not. One day, he made an unnecessary comment about my work. It was subtle, calculated, just enough to make others laugh and to make me feel small, if I let it. And trust me, in the past, I would have explained myself, maybe cracked a sarcastic comeback, maybe even let it slide just to avoid conflict. But this time, I didn't say a word. I turned to him, met his eyes, raised one eyebrow, and said, absolutely nothing. I let his words just hang there, suspended in midair like a balloon with no direction. And suddenly, all the power he thought he had, gone. He looked away, mumbled something under his breath, and quickly moved on to another topic. That moment, it was the last time he ever tried that with me. Because he realized something vital. Without a reaction, there was no reward. And that's the beauty of silence. It starves disrespect of the attention it feeds on. When you don't give it air, it withers. When you don't fuel it with frustration, it fizzles out. But more than just a tactic, silence is a statement. It says, I value my peace over your opinions. And that is powerful. Because here's what most people do when they're insulted. They explain. They defend. They try to win approval from people who were never interested in giving them respect in the first place. But when you choose silence, you refuse to play that game. You say, I don't need your validation. I already know who I am. That's not just empowering. It's revolutionary. And it gets better. Because now that you've learned how to protect your peace with silence, it's time to explore what to do when you choose to speak. That moment of silence isn't just a pause, it's a message, a boundary, a bold act of self-respect. And the more you use it, the more you reclaim your power. When you choose silence instead of snapping back, you're doing something more than keeping the peace, you're reclaiming your energy. You're sending a message without even opening your mouth. You are not worth my words. And it's not about trying to win or control the other person. It's about filtering out the noise. Silence acts like a boundary that keeps your peace intact, while everything toxic bounces right off. Every time you don't respond to that rude comment. Every time you don't engage with that subtle dig or passive-aggressive jab. You're choosing freedom. You're keeping your emotional energy right where it belongs, with you. You stop giving people access to your inner world. You stop allowing them to yank your strings. And you start living on your own terms. I'm not going to lie, learning this wasn't easy for me. There was a time I believed that silence meant weakness. That if I didn't speak up, people would think I had no backbone. So, I kept defending myself. Kept explaining. Kept trying to make them understand. But you know what I noticed? Every time I reacted, I felt worse. Drained, anxious, frustrated. Like I had just handed over a piece of myself. And then, something shifted. I began practicing restraint. When someone tried to get under my skin, I let their words pass through me like static, like meaningless background noise. I breathed. I kept my calm. And I said, nothing. And every single time I did that, I felt stronger, lighter, more grounded. It was like I had picked up a piece of my power off the floor and put it back in my pocket. So here's my challenge for you. The next time someone disrespects you, whether with sarcasm, attitude, or backhanded compliments, just pause. Take a breath. Look them straight in the eye. And say, absolutely nothing. Let the silence do what words can't. Let it stretch just long enough for them to feel it. You might be surprised how quickly the energy in the room shifts, and how freeing it feels for you. Because sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is no statement at all. 3. Stop explaining your choices. Now let's move into something just as powerful, and maybe even more personal. Stop explaining your choices. Seriously, how many times has this happened to you? You make a decision, for your health, your time, your boundaries, and someone immediately chimes in with, "Why'd you do that? Why didn't you go to that thing? Why are you acting like that?" And now that you've learned how to stay grounded in silence, let's talk about another way to protect your peace, one that doesn't involve silence, but firm self-respect. Let's be real, This one hits close to home for so many of us. How many times have you made a decision that felt right for you, only to have someone immediately question it? Why'd you take that job? Why didn't you go to that event? Why are you doing that now? It's like people believe they're entitled to a full explanation for every move you make. But here's the honest truth, they're not. Your life is not a court case. Your decisions don't need to be defended or submitted for approval. You don't owe anyone a script explaining how and why you're living your life the way you are. And sure, that might sound a little controversial, especially in a world where people think they deserve access to every part of you. But let's be clear. Most of the time, when someone questions your choices, they're not trying to understand you better. They're trying to measure, to doubt, or even to judge. They want you to second-guess yourself. They want you to play small so they can feel safe. And they want to pull you back into their comfort zone by making your boldness feel wrong. But here's what happens when you stop explaining yourself. You reclaim your autonomy. You send a clear, powerful message: my life isn't up for debate. You show the world, and more importantly, yourself, that you trust your path. That your self-worth is not hanging on their approval or agreement. That your choices belong to you, and no one else. Let's dig into why people do this in the first place. When you make a choice that steps outside the lines, maybe it's unconventional, risky, or simply different, it can challenge people's worldview. Maybe you're chasing a dream they gave up on. Maybe you're setting a boundary they never had the courage to draw. Or maybe you're walking a path they've never dared to consider. And that makes them uncomfortable. So what do? They ask questions. They prod. They try to poke holes in your decision, not because they want clarity, but because they want comfort. It's not really about you. It's about them trying to make sense of something they wouldn't have the guts to do themselves. But here's the truth. Their discomfort? It's not your responsibility. You don't exist to make other people feel comfortable. You're not here to reassure the world that your boldness is safe. Your life is not a public service announcement. And no, you don't have to explain why you're doing what you're doing to anyone. I remember when I made the decision to switch careers. I left a safe, stable job, one with benefits, security, predictability, to pursue something I was actually passionate about. And the moment word got out, it was like I had announced I was moving to Mars. People stared. They gasped. They asked, "Wait, why would you give that up?" Some even laughed nervously, waiting for me to say I was joking. But I wasn't. And that decision became a defining moment in how I approached the world. Because I realized, just because people don't understand your path doesn't mean you owe them directions. So no, you don't owe anyone an explanation. And once I stopped offering one, everything changed. At first, when I left my secure job for something riskier but more fulfilling, the questions came in like waves. Why would you leave something so stable? How are you going to make it work? And of course, I tried to answer. I'd sit there, carefully laying out my plan. This is about purpose. I've thought it through. I've run the numbers. But no matter what I said, it never felt like enough. The more I explained, the more people questioned. They'd poke holes, raise eyebrows, and offer advice I never asked for. Each time I tried to justify my decision, I found myself slowly shrinking, like I was trying to win their approval for a life they weren't even living. Until one day, I tried something different. When someone asked, "But why would you leave that job?" I looked them in the eye, smiled slightly, and said, "Because I wanted to." That was it. No explanation. No sales pitch. No backstory or breakdown. Just the truth, short, simple, and complete. And let me tell you, that silence afterward, it was golden. People didn't know what to say. Because I had taken away the power they thought they had, the power to question my direction, to insert their judgment into my story. And you know what happened next? They stopped asking. That moment taught me something powerful. Not explaining yourself is one of the most freeing things you can do. It's a declaration, a quiet stand in your own truth. It says, "This is my life, my decision, and that's enough." When you stop justifying your actions, something amazing happens. You give yourself permission to live authentically. You stop wasting energy explaining your path to people who were never going to walk it anyway. And you start pouring that energy into actually living the life you chose. There's a deeper lesson here, one that many people miss. Your life doesn't need a public vote. It's not a group project. Not every choice needs to be examined, picked apart, or signed off on. When you stop explaining, you're telling the world, "I'm confident enough in who I am to not need your approval." Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone truly confident give a long, drawn-out explanation for their life decisions? Probably never. Because people who are deeply secure in themselves don't seek permission. They don't need applause. They know that the only person who needs to be at peace with the decision is them. And look, I've been there. I used to give full-on PowerPoint presentations for every major decision I made. Seriously, I'd walk people through every reason, every step, just to make them feel better about my choice. But here's what I realized. The more I explained, the more I opened myself up to doubt. Their opinions began to chip away at my confidence, even if I had been sure just moments before. So I made a pact with myself. If someone asks about a decision, I'll answer briefly. Maybe a sentence, 2, max. If they push for more, I smile and move on. And that brings us to a powerful truth about boundaries, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. And once I stopped explaining my life to others, something incredible happened. I felt lighter, clearer, like I had finally taken back the wheel. The truth is, the less I explained, the more confident I became. The more I stopped seeking approval, the more peace I found. So here's my challenge to you. The next time someone questions your decision, whether it's what you do, where you go, or who you choose to be, don't fall into the trap of over-explaining. Just smile and say, "Because I wanted to." Or simply, "That felt right to me." Then let the silence do the talking. Let it hang in the air like a quiet wall of certainty. And watch what happens. You'll feel more grounded, more in control, and surprisingly, more at ease, because you're no longer carrying the weight of other people's expectations. And the best part? You'll realize something deeply freeing. Your decisions are valid, not because others agree with them, but because you made them. That's it. That's enough. 4. Keep your distance. Now let's talk about something that might sound uncomfortable, but is absolutely necessary. Keeping your distance. Let's be honest, sometimes the best way to handle people who continually disrespect you is to step back. I know, it sounds harsh. Maybe even cold. But here's the hard truth. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. If someone has shown, time and again, that they don't respect your time, your boundaries, or your energy, one of the most loving, powerful things you can do is create space. And no, that doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you're cutting them off in anger. It simply means you're choosing to protect your peace. Keeping your distance isn't about punishment. It's about self-respect. You're not ignoring them out of spite. You're choosing where your energy goes, and who gets access to it. Imagine your life as a VIP-only club. There's limited seating. Not everyone gets backstage passes, and that's okay. If someone constantly crosses your boundaries, if they make you feel small, drained, or anxious every time you're around them, why would you keep them close? Why would you give them premium access to your time, your emotions, and your space? You wouldn't invite someone to wreck your house and then hand them the keys. So why invite someone to your inner circle who keeps breaking down your peace? It's okay to step back. In fact, it's necessary. Because distance doesn't just protect you, it gives you clarity. It removes the noise. It lifts the emotional fog that disrespect can create, things like guilt, manipulation, and obligation. When you step back, you start to see the situation for what it really is. You start to remember who you are, without their constant influence clouding your perspective. So here's something to reflect on. Who in your life have you been keeping close, even though they've shown you, time and again, they don't deserve that space? What would happen if you gave yourself permission to step back, not in anger, but in strength? Creating distance isn't about revenge. It's about protection. And when you do it with quiet confidence, it becomes one of the most powerful things you can ever do for your peace. Let's be honest, when you keep toxic people close, it's like inviting them into an emotional buffet where they help themselves to your energy, your patience, and your boundaries. They criticize your life, your choices, your ideas. They judge what you do and how you do it. And you're left wondering, why do I feel so anxious, drained, or frustrated every time I'm around them? The answer is simple. You're giving away access to people who haven't earned it. Giving yourself space from people who constantly disrespect or belittle you isn't harsh, it's self-preservation. It's not about being cruel. It's about protecting your mental health, preserving your emotional clarity, and making space for the kind of people who actually see you, support you, and want the best for you. And yes, letting go of the guilt around distancing yourself can feel strange at first. But once you get past that guilt, it's liberating. Because the truth is, you're not obligated to keep anyone in your life just because of history, especially if that history is filled with jabs, disrespect, or emotional exhaustion. Let me tell you a story. There was someone I used to call a close friend. We had known each other for years. But slowly, subtly, they started turning everything into a critique. My job. My relationships. Even the music I listened to. Nothing was ever good enough. Everything was a joke, except the jokes started to sting. At first, I told myself, that's just their sense of humor. Or maybe I'm too sensitive. So I kept showing up, kept laughing along, kept making space for them in my life. But over time, those little comments became like tiny needles, wearing me down, one remark at a time. I started walking on eggshells around them, always bracing for the next jab, always feeling smaller when I left. One day, I didn't confront them. I didn't cause a scene. I simply stepped back. Instead of seeing them weekly, I saw them once a month. Then less. And with every inch of distance I created, I felt lighter, freer. And in that space, I saw something clearly for the first time. That relationship was never uplifting me. It was draining me. And I deserved better. Here's the part that might feel uncomfortable, but you need to hear it. Some people will try to make you feel bad for protecting yourself. They'll say, but they're family. Or you've been friends forever. They'll call it selfish. They'll call it rude. But let's ask the real question. At what cost are you keeping them close? We're taught to be loyal, to forgive endlessly, to always be nice. But niceness without boundaries leads to burnout. Forgiveness without change becomes a cycle. And loyalty to the wrong people? That can break you. Here's a little secret they won't teach you in school. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. You're not here to be anyone's emotional punching bag. You are not a permanent therapist for someone who never listens. You are not a vending machine for validation. Sometimes, the most honest way to say I've had enough, is not with words, but with distance. And here's where it gets deeper. Keeping your distance is a quiet but powerful reminder that you are your own protector. You are allowed to choose who gets access to you. And that choice is sacred. Creating distance doesn't mean you're heartless, it means you finally understand that you come first. And that understanding, it changes everything. When you step back from people who constantly disrespect you, you're not being cruel, you're choosing to prioritize your well-being. Because here's something you need to know deep in your bounds. You don't have to keep playing a role that someone else has cast you in. You're not here to be endlessly available. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your mind, your time, or your emotional bandwidth. When you put distance between yourself and those who cross the line, you're saying, clearly and quietly, my peace is a priority. And that's not just self-care. That's self-respect. Distance does something powerful. It clears the noise. It brings you back to yourself. It gives you room to breathe, to reflect, to realign with the relationships that truly matter, the ones that feel uplifting, supportive, respectful. Think about it. When you spend more time around people who value you, who truly see you, you begin to feel more confident, more fulfilled, more you. And the less time you spend around those who bring you down, the less influence they have over your thoughts, your moods, your self-worth. I'll admit something to you. For a long time, I felt guilty about pulling away, even from people who treated me poorly. I'd wonder, what if they think I'm being cold? What if I'm just being too sensitive? I'd carry around this weight of worry, questioning whether I was doing the right thing. But as time went on, I began to see it differently. Creating distance wasn't about pushing people away in anger. It was about opening space for growth, for better relationships, for emotional clarity, for a stronger version of me. And when I finally gave myself permission to do that, something incredible happened. I felt free. I felt energized. I felt more at peace, like I could finally hear my own thoughts without the constant background noise of criticism and guilt. So here's my challenge to you. Take a quiet moment to think about the people in your life. Who's always bringing you down? Who makes you feel small, anxious, or chronically drained? Then ask yourself honestly, do they really deserve this much access to me? Because the truth is, access to you is a privilege, not a default setting. And sometimes the strongest boundary you can draw is with silence and space. 5. Hold your head high. Now let's talk about an old school classic. It's simple. It's timeless. And it's one of the most powerful things you can do in the face of disrespect. Hold your head high. Here's the thing. When someone disrespects you, they're not just trying to be rude, they're trying to shrink you. They want to make you second-guess yourself. To look down. To fold in. To question whether you belong. They're hoping you'll lower your eyes, lower your energy, and lower your worth. But when you stand tall, literally, when you lift your chin, square your shoulders, and walk into the room with calm presence, you're saying without a single word, I know exactly who I am, and nothing you say or do will change that. That kind of presence is disarming. That kind of poise is disruptive, especially to people who thrive on control. Because here's the truth most people don't realize. Confidence makes insecure people uncomfortable. Especially the ones who try to disrespect others. Why? Because their entire power play relies on your reaction. They want to get inside your head. They want to shift your energy. They want to see that what they say matters to you. But when you don't flinch, when you don't shrink, when you simply hold your head high and carry on like their words are irrelevant background noise, they lose their grip. I remember being around someone who had a habit of throwing subtle insults my way. You know the type, always a smug smirk, always a joke that feels more like a jab. At first, I tried to be chill. Tried to ignore it. Tried to play it off with a nervous laugh or a quick change of topic. But deep down, it got to me. I started dreading being around them. I'd overthink what to say, how to react, or how to keep my guard up. I was handing over power without even realizing it. Until one day, I decided enough was enough. No speech. No confrontation. Just a shift. I walked in that day with my posture straight, head held high, shoulders relaxed. And every time they made one of their little comments, I didn't flinch. I met their eyes, smiled calmly, and moved on, like their words were just air. And something changed. They started backing off. Almost like they could sense, this person doesn't react the same anymore. It was like their insults were bouncing off a shield they couldn't see. And suddenly, the power they thought they had, it vanished. That's the magic of holding your head high. It's more than posture. It's a silent force field. It says, I'm untouchable. I've outgrown this. You no longer get to shake me. And here's where it gets interesting. People who don't respect you, they hate seeing you confident. It disrupts their narrative. They want to believe they're above you, that they have something over you. And when you walk through life with dignity, self-assurance, and a smile that doesn't waver, it offends that idea. To them, it's like a glitch in the system. Because society isn't always comfortable with people who radiate quiet power, especially when that power doesn't ask for permission. But here's the good news. You don't need anyone's comfort to stand in your truth. Confidence is powerful. It speaks louder than comebacks. And when you hold your head high, you're sending a message, one that disrupts disrespect without saying a single word. But let's be real. People don't always know what to do with someone who's unapologetically sure of themselves. Especially someone who refuses to be defined by negativity. When you walk with confidence, some people may see it as a challenge. You might become a target, simply because your presence triggers their insecurity. But here's the truth that sets you free. Holding your head high is not about them. It's about you. It's about living every single day with the deep awareness that your worth isn't up for discussion. It's about acting like you've got nothing to prove, because you don't. And in a world that constantly tells you to apologize, explain, and shrink, that kind of posture becomes a radical act of self-respect. Every time you hold your head high, you're making a silent declaration. You're saying, I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. And no amount of criticism, shade, or judgment will change that. Because real self-worth, it's not something you earn from other people's praise. It's something you claim, boldly, quietly, intentionally. Even if others doubt you. Even if they whisper behind your back. Even if they never give you the validation you once thought you needed. You move forward like someone who already has everything they need inside them. Because you do. Holding your head high is more than good posture. It's a mindset, a daily practice. It's a reminder that you are the main character in your own story, not a side character in someone else's opinion. And the more you live this way, with your head up, your energy steady, and your presence strong, the more you'll notice something amazing. Disrespect. It starts to fade into the background. Why? Because you're no longer tuned into it. You're not giving it airtime. You're too focused on your own lane, your own growth, your own joy, to waste time on anyone trying to pull you down. Now, I'll be honest, this didn't come naturally to me. I used to be the person who would slouch in a room full of judgment. Who'd avoid eye contact to avoid confrontation. Who'd shrink myself because it felt safer. It felt easier to disappear than to stand tall. But over time, I started noticing something powerful. Every time I lifted my chin instead of dropping it. Every time I looked people in the eye instead of looking away. Every time I refused to let someone's negativity sink into my spirit. I felt stronger. Not louder, not more aggressive. Just solid. It was like I was sending a message to myself. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to be you. And every time I did that, my confidence didn't just rise, it stabilized. Because that's the secret. Confidence isn't about never feeling small. It's about reminding yourself, over and over again, that you're not. Every time I stood a little taller, not just in posture, but in presence, I realized something life-changing. I didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy. I already was. Because that's what holding your head high truly means. It's not just about walking with your chin up, it's about walking through life like you know you belong. It's a mental posture as much as a physical one. It's about how you show up in rooms, in conversations, in moments of tension. You walk in not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty, as if to say, I don't need to shrink to fit into your idea of who I should be. You don't fold when people throw shade. You don't bend when someone makes a snarky remark. You don't mold yourself to be more palatable, more agreeable, more, less. Because when someone throws a subtle dig or an outright insult your way, what they're often doing is projecting. They're not reflecting who you are, they're revealing who they are. So I carry the weight of their insecurity. Here's my challenge to you. The next time you feel that sting of disrespect, whether it's a passive-aggressive comment, a backhanded compliment, or a public put-down, do something bold. Don't react. Take a slow breath. Pull your shoulders back. Lift your head. Then, look them straight in the eye, not with anger, but with clarity. As if to say, I see what you're doing, but I'm above it. Let that be your response. Let silence and stature do the talking. And in that moment, you'll feel something shift. A rush of quiet confidence. A subtle but deep sense of peace. Because their words no longer hold power over you, you've outgrown them. Holding your head high is more than just posture. It's a declaration. It says, I know who I am. I value who I am. And nothing you say will change that. Because at the end of the day, respect starts with you. The more you hold yourself with respect, in your body, in your mind, in your choices, the less space there is for anyone else's disrespect to even land. They can try. They can push. But it won't stick, not anymore. So stand tall. Own your worth. And remind yourself, every single day, you are worthy. You are enough. And you are allowed to take up space, fully and unapologetically. And there you have it, real, grounded, powerful ways to deal with people who just don't get it, and maybe never will. Because life, it's too short to bend over backwards for those who refuse to see your value. You don't need their approval to stand tall. You don't need their permission to protect your peace. You don't need their validation to live boldly, on your terms. People will try to bring you down. They'll test your boundaries. They'll press to see if you'll fold. But now you know better. So from here on out, stand tall. Say less. Respect yourself more. And let your presence speak volumes. Look, people will always have opinions. They'll test your boundaries. They'll question your choices. They'll project their doubts onto your decisions. That's just the world we live in. But here's the beautiful part. You get to decide what you allow in. You're not helpless. You're not at the mercy of every comment, every opinion, or every stare. You have the right, and the power, to choose what kind of energy surrounds you. You set the standard for how people treat you. You draw the line. And the more consistently you honor that line, the more others will start to honor it too. Here's the best part. The more you focus on building your own self-respect, the more you'll begin to notice a shift. You'll start attracting people who see your worth, who respect your boundaries, who lift you up instead of pulling you down. Because like energy attracts like energy. And it all starts with you, owning your worth, owning your choices, and owning your space in this world. So here's your gentle reminder. Hold your head high. Embrace the power of silence when it protects your peace. And never, ever apologize for walking away from what no longer serves you. Sometimes the strongest move isn't loud, it's quiet, deliberate, and done with love for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you a moment of clarity, strength, or peace, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want more content like this to help you build confidence, own your life, and thrive on your terms, hit that subscribe button. Speech bubble emoji. Got a story about handling disrespect or setting boundaries that changed your life? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and someone else out there probably needs to hear it too. Heart hands emoji. Until next time. Take care. Stay strong. And always remember, respect starts with you. And when you live like you believe that, the world starts to believe it too.